Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core studio. Welcome to the show. So I have been known to build some pretty strange and out there decks. Like this episode on my Mad Lad deck that is a tribeless Morophon deck. Or as some others like to call it, Morophon Monuments. Or how about this other off-the-wall deck that's built around a Luna Apex of Wishes and only one non-land permanent. But as strange as these decks and others have been, they very well might not be my weirdest deck of all time, and the title might just go to the deck from this episode. And actually, this might be my weirdest thumbnail of all time. I mean, what is actually even going on here? There's like a hat, wearing a crown, with some glasses and a mustache. I just tried to find some really weird things and put them together with a deck next to it. Anyways, to find out what's in that deck, let's jump into it. So the idea for this deck came about from a very janky but very fantastic card from Dark Ascension, Lost in the Woods. And actually, side note, every single time I see the title of this card, I think about Lost Woods from Legend of Zelda, and then the song gets stuck in my head, you know, dun 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 dun. Anyways, Lost in the Woods is a 12-cent card that sees play in about 0% of decks on EDH Rec, actually 238 in total, but yeah, basically 0. Regardless, what it does do is very flavorful and incredible. It's an enchantment for 3 green and says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a forest card, remove that creature from combat, then put the revealed card on the bottom of your library. So if we keep revealing forests off the top of our library, this is kind of like the ultimate protection from our opponent's creatures in combat. Ghostly Prison, eat your heart out. As long as the top card of our library continues to be a forest, our opponent's creatures can't hit us. Now, obviously there's a reason why this doesn't see a lot of play, whereas something like Ghostly Prison does. Ghostly Prison is an attack deterrent in pretty much any scenario. You're not dependent on the top card of your library being something. And this is very much dependent on having a forest on top of your library. Now, hear me out on this, and it might seem pretty off the wall, but you know what? That's okay. What if we built a deck around this card that could essentially guarantee that the cards on top of our library are forests? Every time an opponent attacks us, oh, another forest. No matter how many creatures they attack us with, oh, yet another forest, and another forest. All the forests. And we're essentially going to be guaranteed to hit a forest every single time because we're going to be running 97 forests. Okay, I guess I should specify 96 basic forests and then 1 gingerbread cabin because why not? Gingerbread Cabin is a forest, and when it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped unless we control 3 or more other forests, which we will, and when it enters the battlefield untapped, we create a food token. Regardless, an absurd number of forests. Now, if you're doing the math in your head, you might be thinking, okay, why are we at 97 of these lands? Okay, so we've got, Lost in the Woods, 97 lands, that's 98, plus the commander, that's 99, so do we, have a companion, or a partner commander, or what? What else is there? Well, let me introduce you to the lovely Serum Powder. Serum Powder is a 37-cent card that sees play in even less decks than Lost in the Woods at 160 total decks. It's an artifact for 3 that taps for a colorless, and it says anytime you could mulligan and Serum Powder is in your hand, you may exile all the cards from your hand, then draw that many cards. And you can do this in addition to taking mulligans. So this kind of gives you an extra mulligan while also thinning out your deck by getting rid of your cards in your hand. So the goal of this deck is pretty simple and straightforward. Mulligan over and over again until you hit Lost in the Woods. If you hit Serum Powder and not Lost in the Woods, get rid of it in your hand. Even if you mulligan down to 2 cards and one of them is Lost in the Woods, that's a fantastic hand. Because again, with the number of lands in this deck, you are never going to miss a land drop. Now, obviously, even with all your mulligans and serum powder, your chances of getting lost in the woods in your opening hand, or at least out of the top 5 cards of your library, isn't very great. And for any of you mathematicians out there that want to take on the challenge, I would love to hear the percentage chance in the comments below. But for now, just like Han Solo said to C-3PO, never tell me the odds. And just as Han Solo navigated that asteroid field, we're gonna get our opponents lost in the woods. Yeah, that works. Okay, we'll go with that. Now, I have been waiting for this moment for a long time, because when selecting the commander for the deck, there's one that I knew had to lead it. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to my favorite card from my childhood with Sylvaas Rogue Elemental. Sylvaas is big, dumb, and green, and I love every bit of it. It's currently a 45-cent card that, as a commander, only has 26 decks to its name. Well, guess what, EDH Rec? Here comes deck number 27. Sylvaas is an 8/5 elemental with trample that costs 3 green, green, green. By paying a green, we regenerate Sylvaas. And that's it. That is all this commander does. Much like the rest of our deck, Sylvaas is very simple and straightforward, and that's the way we like it. You get Sylvaas out, you smack your opponents. They try to kill Sylvaas, you regenerate it. It's that simple. They try to hit you, Lost in the Woods solves that problem. Now, is this deck good? No, but that's not the point. There are plenty of ways that you can be stopped. First of all, you could mulligan down to basically no cards and never get lost in the woods. Or if you do get lost in the woods, an opponent could counter it or, destroy it, and you wouldn't be able to get it back. In both cases, then, you're just depending on Sylvaas to, win the game for you, which is highly unlikely. And even with Lost in the Woods in play and Sylvaas and your opponent's not dealing with it, well, they can maybe, just cast a burn spell or something like that and take you out in that way. Or like an alternative win condition. There's plenty of ways you can lose. Even if an opponent just gets something in play that has, like 9 toughness, you can't get through a Sylvaas then, so yeah, you basically are going to lose. Now, if this deck is not powerful and will rarely work, why did I build it? The answer is simple. Commander is a strange format, and I like to do weird things in it. Especially when the entire deck, excluding basic lands, is just $1.07. And if you even just took out the gingerbread cabin, which is nice to have but not all that needed, the total price would be less than $1 at 92 cents. There you go, an even cheaper option if you don't want to pay the $1.07. So if you really just want a joke deck for a really crazy game that you can pull out every now and then, yeah, that's a pretty nice price for it. If your friends have some really casual decks, well, it doesn't get much more casual than 97 land Lost in the Woods. Led by my personal favorite, Sylvaas Rogue Elemental, though there are other commanders that you can definitely consider for this deck. But before we talk about those considerations, let's talk about some other potential cards to consider for this build, starting with Dryad Arbor. Like Gingerbread Cabin, it is also a forest, but unlike Gingerbread Cabin, it is quite a bit more expensive, though not as expensive as it used to be. Currently, it's around $4, and this is a land creature forest dryad, so yep, definitely a forest, and it can tap for a green like a forest does. But unlike a regular forest, this is a 1/1. So if we haven't got lost in the woods yet, we can utilize this as a chump blocker if we really need to stall. And if we have got lost in the woods and we reveal this off the top, well, it is a forest, so it counts. Now, other potential considerations that aren't forests, and you're going to want to be careful with these, are cards like Planar Bridge, Planar Portal, and Ring of Three Wishes. Planar Bridge has pay 8 and tap, search your library for a permanent card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So obviously we can utilize this to, get lost in the woods directly into play. And then Planar Portal has pay 6 and tap it, search your library for a card, and put that card in your hand, then shuffle your library. So, like Planar Bridge, but instead of getting that card directly into play, it comes into our hand, which again would be Lost in the Woods. And then Ring of Three Wishes is somewhat similar, but we can only do this 3 times. Even a card like Tamio's Journal might want to be considered as well. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, investigate, and by tapping and sacrificing 3 clues, you search your library for a card and put that card in your hand, then shuffle your library. So it's kind of like a delayed tutor in a way, since you've got to wait to get 3 clues. So again, in mono green, there aren't really many tutors to help us go get lost in the woods, but these could help out. Though do keep in mind that by adding more non-forest cards in your deck, Lost in the Woods could whiff. Now, obviously, it can still do that with Serum Powder, which is already in the deck, but it's still a smaller percentage chance. But now that we've talked about other cards to consider, let's talk about other commanders to consider. If you don't want to use my favorite card from my childhood with Sylvaas Rogue Elemental, which is just the best card of all time, if you don't want to do that, we can talk about other ones. I'm not bitter about it, okay? Anyways, let's go. Another mono green commander that came to mind was Grun the Lonely King. Grun is a 5/5 ape warrior with kicker 3 that costs 4 green. It has if Grun the Lonely King was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 5+1/+1 counters on it, and whenever Grun attacks alone, double its power and toughness until end of turn. Now, Grun is actually pretty flavorful for this deck as well, because Grun is going to be very lonely with this deck, because it's just Grun in a bunch of forests and Lost in the Woods, and that's basically it. But also, even if you don't kick Grun, it's swinging as a 10-10 every single time. And if you do kick Grun, it's swinging as a 20-20. Now, unfortunately, unlike my favorite Sylvaas, well, this doesn't have trample, and it also doesn't have a way to protect itself like regeneration. So it's definitely a riskier commander to pick, and I would definitely stick with Sylvaas, but do what you want. But next up, yet another mono green commander to consider is Nissa Vastwood Seer. Nissa is a 2/2 elf scout that costs 2 and a green. She has when she enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic forest card, reveal it, put in your hand, then shuffle your library. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands, exile Nissa, then return her to the battlefield transformed under owner's control. Nissa transforms into Nissa Sage Animus, which is a planeswalker with 3 loyalty. Her +1 is reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield, otherwise put in your hand. Her -2 is put a legendary 4/4 green elemental creature token named Ashaya the Awoken World onto the battlefield. And her -7 is untap up to 6 lands. They become 6/6 elemental creatures. They're still lands. So keep in mind that Lost in the Woods also protects your planeswalkers, so that's why Nissa is a consideration. Her +1 is basically guaranteed to ramp you, which is nice, I guess, if she gets dealt with, and then you have to recast her. Her -2 can make you a 4/4, but unfortunately it is legendary, but the win condition for this deck would be your -7, making 6 lands into 6 6s. Another potential mono green commander consideration is Ovia Pashari Sage Lifecrafter. She's a 1/2 human artificer just for a green, so you can get her down on turn 1. She has to pay 2 and a green and tap, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. And by paying 4 and a green and tapping her, create an XX colorless construct artifact creature token where X number of creatures you control. So you can get Ovia down early, and then you can start making servos to protect yourself until you get your Lost in the Woods out. So this is definitely a commander that can help you stall for longer if you need to, and also once you get Lost in the Woods out and are protected, well, you can just keep building up your army and making even bigger ones and then swinging out. But next up, let's talk about a very similar commander though with Reese the Redeemed. Reese is a 1/1 elf warrior that costs Selesnya, so yeah, you can still cast it with your forests. By paying 2 and a Selesnya and tapping it, you create a 1/1 green and white elf warrior creature token. And then by paying 4 Selesnya and tapping it, for each creature token you control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. So Reese can go even wider than Ovia Pashari and can fill the board very quickly. And because Reese is a Selesnya commander, it also gives you access to certain cards like Idyllic Tutor. Idyllic Tutor is a sorcery for 2 and a white that says search your library for an enchantment card, reveal it, put in your hand, then shuffle your library. So obviously this and other tutors like it in white can get us Lost in the Woods. Now it might be risky to put tutors like this in this deck because there are only so many forests that can actually tap for a white. That being said, let's talk about those lands and some other commanders that might want to utilize them. Now, a 5-color commander like Golos Tireless Pilgrim could be an option for a Lost in the Woods deck. Golos is a 3/5 scout for 5, and when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. And then by paying 2 in Wooburg, exile the top 3 cards of your library, you may play them this turn without paying their mana cost. So first up, an option would be to go get the World Tree. Now this land is not a forest, but it's pretty fantastic. Anyways, it enters the battlefield tapped and taps for a green. It says as long as you control 6 or more lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. So this essentially fixes our mana completely, and then we can just keep activating Golos, hoping to hit Lost in the Woods off the top. Now, unfortunately, that's really not going to win us the game because, Golos is just a 3/5, and it's probably not going to get through any combat damage anytime soon. Another option could be to go with a Maze's End win condition. Maze's End is a land that enters the battlefield tapped, and it taps for a colorless, and by paying 3 and tapping it, return it back to our hand, and we search our library for a gate card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle our library. If we control 10 or more gates with different names, we win the game. Basically, we need to go get all the gates that we can, and then we win. Now, unfortunately, the gates are not forests, so essentially then, 1 out of every 10 of our lands would not be a forest when someone's attacking us. And if someone blew up Maze's End or one of our gates, we'd be in big trouble. Regardless, just a consideration. And yet another consideration would be that with a 5-color commander like Golos, we can easily utilize a companion like Keruga. Keruga the Macro Sage is a 5/4 dinosaur hippo that costs 3 Simic. Its companion requirement is that our starting deck contains only cards with converted mana cost 3 or greater and land cards, which again, our deck does. And then whenever Keruga the Macro Sage enters the battlefield, we draw a card for each other permanent we control with converted mana cost 3 or greater. Now, is this all really that important what this does? No. What's most important about having a companion is that it just takes up a card slot. So then in our main deck, we only have 98 cards instead of 99, making it slightly more likely to get lost in the woods in a hand. Also, with a 5-color commander, you've got access to more lands with things like Scattered Groves and Sheltered Thicket. One is a Forest Plains and one is a Mountain Forest, but both can cycle for 2. So if we need to, we can cycle these away, hoping to dig further and get to Lost in the Woods. And similarly, there's the Triomes with Indatha Triome, Ketria Triome, and Zagoth Triome, which again are forests, though one is a Plain Swamp Forest, one is a Forest Island Mountain, and one is a Swamp Forest Island. Regardless, all forests, but all cycle for 3. And of course, if for whatever reason you want to dump a bunch of money into this deck, consider Shocklands as well. Overgrown Tomb is a Swamp Forest, Temple Garden is a Forest Plain, Stomping Ground is a Mountain Forest, and Breeding Pool is a Forest Island, and all connected to the battlefield untapped if you pay 2 life. And we even got some cheap dual lands that can help us out as well with Arctic Treeline, Highland Forest, Rhinewood Falls, and Woodland Chasm. Each are half forest and do enter the battlefield tapped, but still we'll take what we can get. And the final forest that I'm going to bring up is somewhat of a strange one with Murmuring Bosk. As it enters the battlefield, we can reveal a Tree Folk from our hand. If we don't, it enters the battlefield tapped. So yeah, we're not going to be able to reveal a Tree Folk from our hand, but that's fine. It taps for a white or a black and it deals 1 damage to us. So if instead of running a mono green commander or a commander like Reese, we can run, all these lands and hopefully get the mana fixing for a commander like a Sika. Or should I say the Prismatic Bridge. Anyways, we'll tackle both sides of the card, as Sika, God of the Tree, is a 1/4 god for 1 green. She has Vigilance and tap add 1 mana of any color, and other legendary creatures you control have Vigilance and tap add 1 mana of any color. But the Prismatic Bridge side is more likely what we're going to be looking to cast, which is a legendary enchantment for Wooburg. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature or planeswalker card, put that card into the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So with this, we could utilize a tutor creature like Runescarred Demon. It's a 6/6 flying demon for 5 black, and when it enters the battlefield, we search our library for a card, we put it into our hand, then we shuffle our library. So with this, obviously, we could tutor for Lost in the Woods, then cast it, and try to win the game just by attacking with Runescarred Demon, or if we included a couple of other creatures in the deck as well. So that might be Ulamog the Infinite Gyre, or Blightsteel Colossus, etc, etc. Regardless, everyone knows that my favorite Sylvaas is the true choice for this deck. But pick whatever you want. Regardless, I really do believe that this might be my weirdest deck of all time. Again, is it going to be powerful? No. But is it going to be unexpected, inexpensive, and fun? Absolutely. And isn't having fun what Commander's all about? So I hope that you have fun going and getting lost in the woods, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.